Rosselli Northern supports upstate New York construction with over 400 employees, 250 trucks, 9 ready-mix plants, 4 blacktop plants, and 40 aggregate mines. But their most important number is your bottom line. Contact them today to see why Rosselli Northern has been the choice for contractors and project managers across upstate New York since 1929.
Inside the Steelers is up against Kaminsky. Bucky calling the ball.
Santel all the way to the basket. Foul. Lays it in for two.
Hey, high school basketball fans, welcome to the Upstate Hoops podcast. It's our special sectional preview edition 2024 here on Monday, February 19th, 2024. Or was it the 19th, 18th?
19th.
It is the 19th. Jim Sinacropi along with Paul Russo and Kyle Evans. We're going to break down all the brackets. Boys and girls, they're set. Over the weekend, maybe you got a chance to look at them. Debut our final power rankings of the year too as well. We'll probably lead off with that and then get into the brackets. So it should be a good hour ahead. Glad you could be with us here on President's Day. Kids are home from school this week, and basketball teams doing a lot of practicing, getting ready for their sectional openers. The Upstate Hoops podcast and all of our coverage of Wayne Finger Lakes High School basketball is brought to you thanks to the support of Generations Bank, serving the financial needs of the Finger Lakes region since 1870. Little John and Barbie Orthodontics. Check out Dr. Rod and Dr. Liz online at littlejohnortho.com. Rosselli Northern, supporting local construction since 1929 with premium products and quality service. Cecchino's Pizzeria and Restaurant. Order online at cecchinos.com. Dr. Jeffrey Halstead, Canandaigua's hometown dentist for more than 35 years, online at CanandaiguaDentistry.com. And DeSanto Propane since 1937. The difference has been DeSanto Propane. Well, fellas, as quick as it started, regular season's ended. Let's take a look at our power rankings, our final power rankings heading into the postseason of the year. And on the boys' side, you got Wayne number 1. They've been there all year, although it looks like Lions might have got a first-place vote this time, huh? Oh, wow.
They did.
That win against York, they've beaten Avon this year. That kind of made me, say, you know what? Their opponents they played, they deserve to go up to 1.
Yeah, although Wayne hasn't lost to New York State this year, I will say that. But yeah, there it is. Wayne does hold on to the number 1 spot, but Lions gets a first-place vote. Newark at number 3. Geneva works their way up to 4. Marcus Whitman boys 5. Great season in Rushville for Greg O'Connor's bunch. Getting all the way up to the 5th spot in our rankings. East Rochester boys, another great season, exceeding expectations. HAC 7, they're top seed in their class. Gananda boys 8, Minders 9, and Honeoye 10. Honeoye, another team out of the West that kind of exceeded our preseason expectations. So let's kick it over to the girls' side, and we got Pell Mac. They've been there for most of the season. Dundee Bradford dominating out of the Finger Lakes West. Gananda girls winning the Wayne County League. And then you got Newark, kind of a resurgent program in Newark for the girls, finishing top 5. Bloomfield in the West, fantastic season. They're the only team that beat Dundee Bradford. Waterloo this past week defeated Minders to split the season series and edge ahead of Minders in our power rankings, our final power rankings, and there you got Minders 7. Lions girls 8, East Rochester girls 9, and hey, there's South Seneca, one of our darlings of Finger Lakes 1 here over the past 10 years when they were going to state Final Fours. They're on the way back up too, so good season down in Ovid. So boys, time now to look ahead to the second season. Not going to waste much time. We'll go through each bracket. Start with the girls or boys? Probably start with the girls.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, yeah. Let's see what we got first here.
So we'll just pop in quick with girls Double A.
Yep.
Our friends over in Victor and Canandaigua, both on the same side of the bracket there. So, but Victor, top seed, and the only bye in Double A for girls.
Yeah, and Canandaigua is a team that I think does have potential to maybe make some noise in this Class AA, and it looks like their championship games will be at FLCC. That's true for all the girls this year,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
FLCC. Okay, we're focusing on the actual Wayne Finger Lakes teams here, not the Victor Canandaigua former Wayne Finger Lakes team. So let's move down to
Pop over to Class D first.
D, and we'll work our way back up. CG Finney being the top seed, the HAC girls and Romulus girls both in there, but frankly, probably it's long shots to make a run here.
Uphill sledding, to say the least.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to some more
Yeah.
brackets that might be a little more.
We'll go to C2 girls on the next swing of things here.
So there they are, Dundee Bradford. I mean, if you're looking at teams that we can, it's tough to say they're a lock, but really strong possibility they will be at FLCC for the championship Friday night. They might have to face league mate Naples in their first round game, which they handled easily twice. There's the South Seneca girls who finished 10th in our power rankings. They're 7th seed in Class C2, and the Honeoye girls down there at 11th seed. But yeah, South Seneca, we'll see. Keshequa would be a tough second round match if they're able to beat Pavilion. But either you guys see anybody beating Dundee Bradford in this bracket, at least until the championship round?
Yeah, I mean, looking at it, it's kind of tough to imagine nobody anyway, or anybody kind of stopping them up to that point. Keshequa's the interesting one. I mean, that's a team that's kind of, at least historically in the past handful of years or so, that's always been at least some sort of competitive. They beat Lions in 2020.
Yep.
I remember.
I called that game.
I remember that game. It was one of the final ones I think we had on FL1 at the time before everything kind of shut down. The other interesting note is South Seneca going against Pavilion, who made it to Far West last year, coming out of the C for Section 5. So I know they graduated a couple of girls who are now playing collegiately, so tougher times here this year, but can't probably sleep on them. But yeah, go back to that original question, Jim. I have a tough time seeing anybody until that championship game in the way of Dundee Bradford.
Yeah, I would probably have to agree. But I do think the team to watch also in this bracket is Fillmore. Looking at their numbers, they went 17-2. They had a great year. They probably could meet Dundee Bradford in that championship game, but yeah, I think Dundee Bradford's the favorite.
And then Dundee Bradford also probably, if you're looking on the girls' side of things, probably the most likely team to maybe advance beyond sectionals. First things first and get to states, but great season for the Brave Scots.
Step over at C1 now for girls.
Okay, so C1, you got the number 1 seed Gananda, another number 1 seed. League mate in the same side of the bracket, East Rochester, the 4 seed. And then down low, you got a great Bloomfield team, and you already had some first-round matchups take place. Clyde Savannah advanced, which great for them. And then Lions. I mean, this is just stacked with Finger Lakes West and Wayne County teams, and it's going to probably, on the girls' side, be one of the most intriguing. I mean, there's a decent chance we could get an all Wayne Finger Lakes Final Four here in C1.
I'd imagine we're going to. I don't know. It probably sounds a bit chalk in that sense, but you look at it, it's kind of hard to imagine just based on what we've seen with Gananda this year. And even then, in my mind, if they were to be upset by anybody, I feel like it'd probably be their arch rival in East Rochester in a way, probably doing it at that point, right? So you look at that top side of the bracket anyway, that's kind of the vibe I get. And the bottom side,
Oakfield, Alabama, could be a spoiler.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, Lions, when they're firing on all cylinders, I think is a tough team to beat, but that Bloomfield team, as we've seen this year, they're a machine when they get rolling too. But I'm with you though, Jim. I don't know what combination we'll necessarily get, but Wayne Finger Lakes sweep in the championship game. I think we see that in C1.
It could be a Final Four, Gananda versus East Rochester and Bloomfield versus Lions. That would be just incredible, and that would be
makes life easier on us too.
place to be determined. But that would be on Monday night, I believe, right?
Yep.
26.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Any thoughts on this bracket, Kyle?
I think, I don't know, Lions scares me because they're just too inconsistent. We've seen them get blown out by Gananda, but then they blow out East Rochester twice. So I think it's about what team shows up. But Oakville, Alabama, 16-4 season. They're pretty good.
Yeah, that will be a test if Alliance gets by Letchworth and Oakfield gets by Geneseo. That'll be a tough quarterfinal. Of all the teams in here, that would probably be the biggest threat to maybe in all Wayne Finger Lake's Final Four in Class C1. But definitely an interesting bracket for sure.
All right, girls Class B, probably the biggest one of them all in theory, I'd say, for us.
Yeah, the first thing that jumps out at you is Minders and Waterloo set to face each other in the quarterfinals if they both win. What night would that be? Wednesday night?
That would be Saturday. If they,
Well, when do
well,
they play the quarterfinals?
Yeah, that's Wednesday.
Wednesday night quarterfinals. Of course, they split in the regular season. Minders won in Seneca Falls. Waterloo just won this past week in a fairly convincing fashion. So, though, if they both win in the quarterfinal or in the opening round here, they would be back in Seneca Falls
Yes.
this weekend for an afternoon tilt, and that will be a pretty fantastic atmosphere at Arthur L. Baker Gymnasium. Couple crosstown rivals, really evenly matched game. You'd like to think Minders has the advantage with their experience in terms of having upperclassmen on the roster, but Waterloo has the postseason experience. I mean, they've played so many postseason games in that program in the past 3 or 4 years. And I wouldn't be shocked to see either one of those teams advance to the final. Well, one of the two probably will advance to the Final Four for sure, but maybe beyond. Dansville would await. I don't see Penn Yan beating them. I don't. Williamson Marion should be noted. They combine programs, having a pretty solid year. I'd like to see them maybe get by Canisteo. I don't know if they can pull the upset of Dansville. And then up top of the bracket, you got Liz Royston's Marcus Whitman Wildcats taking on Livonia. But that Hornell team at the very top of the bracket is probably the one that everybody is concerned about. I mean, if I was filling out brackets, I'd go Hornell Dansville probably in the finals, but I think Minders or Waterloo could get there. Hornell beat Palmac this year, right?
Twice.
Yeah, twice. So that's what would be concerning if you're Minders or Waterloo or Marcus Whitman fan. Palmac won the Finger Lakes East pretty easily. Hornell beat them twice, but that's why they play the game, right?
Yeah.
You guys see who outside of Hornell?
Yeah.
Who's the biggest threat to Hornell in this bracket in Class B?
I mean, I've seen them now a couple of different times. I don't know. I kind of like the way Waterloo's playing right now, just admittedly. I mean, just
Seen it before, right?
yeah, and I know they'll have a higher or tougher road to go through than they're used to here the past couple of years. But I mean, I said it on the broadcast last Wednesday. I'll say it again. You know, they're a bunch of underclassmen that don't play like underclassmen. I can tell you that much. I don't know. It's tough because B is just dominated, at least headline wise, by Hornell. They're the number one team in the state for Class B. They are that for a reason. They've beaten locally Palmac twice. It's one of those things where I have a hard time believing anybody getting by them. But if anybody's going to do it, I really like the chances of. I go Waterloo 1 and then Minders 2, depending upon what happens in theory, that matchup on Saturday.
And it should be a pretty even matchup, right? Although it seems like Waterloo's gotten better over the course of the year. They had a horrible start to the season, and have obviously gotten much better, where Minders has kind of been consistent throughout the season, but Waterloo may have surpassed them, obviously, getting that win last week.
Yeah, if I had to bet, I'm taking Hornell and Dansville. But if we're talking on the Minders Waterloo matchup, I'm probably going to lean with Minders, honestly. I think after losing, in Waterloo the last week, they just played sloppy. That's all really what it was. That was the difference in the game. If they, don't turn the ball over and, just they had weird things going, like they were traveling a bunch, just things that you don't see a lot.
Yeah, Waterloo speeds you up a little bit, and Minders should have they have the upperclassmen, they have the experience. It's just if they I think if they believe in themselves and draw on that experience, and they should. But Waterloo speeds you up. They'll be pressing. They'll be they are younger, but they're great athletes. I mean, it's about as even a matchup as I think you'll find, and that's what Minders 3, Waterloo is 6 seed. And then haven't seen much of Dansville other than over consistently strong program having a great year. Whether Minders or Waterloo could get by Dansville in a semifinal game to get a shot at Hornell, that's questionable as well. So.
Yeah, I mean, the tough part is, too, at some of those teams, we know them just as being consistently good, like Dansville, for example, right? Like, no matter what they kind of do, they seem to be there. Likewise, I mean, just seeing it, like, Wellsville sitting at a 5 seed is, like, one of those things for me where it's like, okay, it's probably a spot where they probably enjoy maybe hiding in a way, almost, Yeah,
and maybe get an upset out of Mid-Lakes
Yeah.
and Whitman. And Whitman wouldn't be a huge upset, but see how far those teams could go as well.
Right.
I think Mid-Lakes got a little bit of a break, although Leroy's pretty good too.
15-5.
Yeah, so this is a tough bracket no matter which way you slice it. And maybe if you're a Minders or Waterloo fan, or even a Williams and Marion, you might be looking at Hornell maybe to get upset along the way. Leroy would probably be the best chance of that happening.
All right, last one on the girls' side, Class A.
Yeah, and some of our local teams kind of a little unlucky having to go up to A instead of being in a B or B1 situation. And right off the back, you have a Newark-Wayne matchup that's probably about as tough a first-round game that Newark Reds fans could expect. Wayne's beaten Waterloo.
Yep.
They're a solid team. Newark did beat them twice in the regular season, I'm pretty sure.
Yep.
So they'll be looking for a third time to get into the quarterfinals, where they would probably face East Ridge. Now, Pell Mac, on the other hand, they're the favorite out of the Wayne Finger Lakes girls to, I don't want to say the favorite. Gananda was obviously a 1 seed. And Dundee Bradford. But in the upper half of the brackets here in Class A, Pell Mac's the best chance. And it's been a while since they've been thwarted by Waterloo several times in the postseason. Now they're not in the bracket with Waterloo, but they're in a bracket with Monroe and East Ridge and East High and Aquinas. So tough bracket. School of the Arts, see them getting by there. Geneva girls, good for them, having a good season. I imagine it ends here against Honeoye Falls Lima. Pell Mac versus Honeoye Falls Lima in the quarterfinal will be a tough one for Pell Mac. And then if they get to the semis at Webster Schroeder, it's going to be East High, Aquinas, maybe waiting for them. Pittsford Sutherland, a really tough team up there as a number 1 seed. So, can Newark maybe get through there? Maybe. Can Pell Mac get to the finals and then take on, probably be like 6-7 point underdogs against a Pittsford Sutherland? This is definitely an interesting bracket, but you can see in the school size this much more difficult road to a sectional championship for Pell Mac than maybe some of these other teams we've talked about so far.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough spot. You look at it, and with the reintroduction of AAA and a couple sports, basketball being kind of the main one of them, I suppose soccer's the other one, but either way, that's a different podcast for a different time. But yeah, I mean, you have pretty much these Wayne Finger Lakes schools are pretty much the smallest of the bunch in A. And all year they've been pretty impressive, all things considered, right? It's going to be tough, though. I'm with you, Jim. Just imagining, I'd say anybody from that top half of the bracket going against Sutherland in theory. I mean, Pell Mac, I like their path to get to the final. I do. It's the matter of when they get there, what happens. I mean, the feather in the hat thing for them is, when they've gone against other A schools this year, they've been able to handle business pretty regularly. So, for Coach Harris and the Red Raiders, I kind of lean on them. If you were to push come to shove, I'd probably take those points in theory when the championship game comes around and not have a problem with it in that hypothetical sense. And it's going to be interesting. Newark's the one team that I could see at least posing a good threat. Hypothetically, if they got to the semis against, say, a Sutherland. Mm-hmm. They've been doing really well all year. Can't imagine for them, the tough part, right, is it's always hard to beat a team like 3 times in a year. We talk about that every now and then. But, in
high school basketball, that doesn't always hold true.
Yeah, I know. But, so, I think we'll get one team from the Finger Lakes East here and Palmac in the finals. Ideally, I don't know. I could see it. Maybe I'm just talking myself into it, seeing like, hey, Newark versus Palmac in the A final. Like that'd be pretty cool. But I think that's me more or less talking myself into it than anything else.
It'll be a tall task.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be nice to see, but honestly, if I had a bet on it, I don't think either team will be in the finals. I think Palmac falls to East. And yeah, I think Newark, they might be able to beat Eastridge, but Pittsford Sutherland, no, I don't think so.
I got faith in Palmac. I think Coach Harris has a ton of experience. Remember, he coached the boys team, coached in the Blue Cross Arena in the sectional finals. He's this group, Taryn Goodness, Coach Harris, for the past couple of years have been, like I say, dealing with that Waterloo, coming close, almost pulling the upset. Now they're 2 seed. They need to go in this looking at it like we are the 2 seed. We're expected to be there. We're expected to beat every team they put in front of us till we get to the finals.
Yeah.
So I know they'll be ready to play, and we've seen with Paul and Ian Goodness over the past few years. Taryn's cut out of the same mold. They're winners, and I expect her to maybe elevate her game to another level here as we enter the postseason.
Yeah, I agree 100% there. All right, I want to jump over to the boys' side.
Yeah, that does it for the girls. Now let's check out the boys.
Quick pit stop, AA boys, just like we did for the girls. See Victor and Canandaigua, neighbors on the AA bracket as well, pretty much.
Yeah, Victor's been dominant the past couple of years. Garrett Clark doing his best to lead Victor back to the promised land again. It'll be a tough second-round matchup against Hilton, but certainly one they could win. Canandaigua taking on Brockport. It'd be nice to see one of those teams getting. It would be great if they could meet in the semis. That's a tall order, but yeah. And of course, up top you got Greece Athena. I mean, these are the big games in the Blue Cross Arena on Friday or Saturday. Yeah. This year it's Friday night. 8 p.m. start. It looks like it's almost another level.
Yeah. All right, jump over here to C3 boys.
Now looking at C3 boys next. HAC. I mean, they're a 2 seed. This is where things get really kind of screwy. Finger Lakes West. Against. It's tough to tell how they're going to match up against. Whether it's Arkport, Consagaraga, or even further down the line. A Fillmore or a CG Finney team that beat Lions, right? I mean, so if you look at it from that perspective, it's tough. Batavia Notre Dame's a high seed in here, but obviously, personally thinking, HAC's the Wolves are the only chance for the Wayne Finger Lakes to maybe pull one off here, but it'll be tough. Have to go to Calmum in the semis, and then they'd get slotted into the 10 a.m. final on Saturday at the Blue Cross, so you have to get up pretty early, although they're closer.
Does that turn into breakfast or brunch at the big house at that point?
I think it's still serving breakfast. I mean, if McDonald's is still letting you get the sausage biscuit, we can call it breakfast.
All right. Yeah, I'm with you there, Jim. It's going to be tough, though. I mean, mention them on the girls' side, right? There's Fillmore, too, at the top for C3 for the boys on this situation. So, tough order. And also, too, I mean, I know North Star Christian this year is not where they've kind of been the past couple of years, but, you mentioned Finney. They beat Lions this year. They got a couple of these private schools in C3 that you just don't quite know exactly what
North
you're going
Star Christian bounces around every year.
You just don't know quite exactly what you're going to get out of them necessarily. I mean, I know HAC's private as well, technically. So, but yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where I'd say the Wolves are probably the best shot in C3, and I don't know. I don't know about this one.
I think of all the teams we cover, that we've probably done the most overlooked the quality of season that HAC's boys have had this year. Kyle, I mean, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think they'll get there, but Fillmore, looking at them, 18-2 season. Obviously, they didn't play in the regular season, so that's what's tough about this bracket. You just don't know how they're going to match up against some of these other teams because of the teams that they played in the regular season. So yeah, I would expect them to be in the championship game, though.
All right. Move over to C2.
Okay, C2, you got the Honeoye boys at 5 seed who had a great season. You saw they ended the in our 10th team in our power rankings. But still, the highest seed that we can muster here would be the Honeyway Bulldogs at 5. South Seneca boys got the opportunity to make some noise. Don't see Clyde doing much out of the 15th seed, nor Red Jacket at the 13th seed, opening up at York. That's a tough one. But Honeyway boys, it's so. This is the thing, if Honeyway was the 4 seed and York was the 5 seed, now York would have to come to Honeyway in the quarterfinals, but that would be a road game for Honeyway in the quarters. I got a tough time seeing us, Wayne Finger Lakes, getting teams into the Final Four in this bracket, Honeyway being the best chance, South Seneca being a bit of an outside shot too. I just don't know if they can hang with the number 2 seed Alexander on the road. And that's what you see here. You got Wayne Finger Lakes teams are going to be on the road in those quarterfinal rounds, and it could be an early exit for the Wayne Finger Lakes in C2.
Yeah, I agree. I think those top 4 seeds in this class are pretty good. I mean, obviously we saw York last week against Lions and they lost, but that was a game that
Lions.
I know Lions had circled anyway when they were playing them. And then also, like I mentioned, the rest of the other top 4 seeds, Byron Burgeon with the bye. B's been really good this year. Alexander's a team that the past couple of years has been really good as well, and that continued on this year. And then the 3 seed and Boulevard Richburg. Don't know a ton about them, admittedly, but you have to probably give them some sort of benefit of the doubt. I know Wheatland Chili at the 6 seed, for example. That was a team that South Seneca lost to last year in the quarterfinals. And I know they ended up bringing back a ton of players as well. So, yeah, this is going to be some tough sledding for the
And as people look at this too, you got to keep in mind that the winners of C1, C2, and C3 go to that bigger playing tournament. So, we'll see in a second. Lions is in C1. They could have a rematch against a York, or they could be facing a Byron Burgeon or a Boulevard Richford, or even Wheatland Chili, which is a team they've played
in the finals last year.
Yeah. So, and then you got the C3 teams too involved. The C3 champ will be involved too. So, something to think about when looking at these C brackets.
Yeah, Honeyway is the only team that I think is going to make it to the second round, and then I think they fall to York. But yeah, I don't think we're not going to get any teams in the championship game.
Yep, barring an upset, although I do got my fingers crossed for South Seneca, but it's too bad they got to go on the road. If Cuba Rushford was coming to the Jack Guinan and Ovid, might feel a little better about it, but that's a tough road trip.
I could be wrong. Is that neutral site, possibly, or
Cuba South Seneca?
Yeah.
I don't know, usually.
I'm just saying, because I don't know the exact mileage, but
Right.
that's got to be pushing that 75-mile marker. At the very least. Who knows, though. I'm with you, though, Jim. All right, let's move over to that C1 bracket that we were talking about.
This is a great bracket. As you can see, we got top seeds, 1 and 2 seeds, both out of the Wayne Finger Lakes. Lions at top, former Wayne County League member. Well, East Rochester is in Wayne County. Lions is independent, but they know each other really well. They played this year. 1 and 2 seed could set up for a great Final Four at Pittsford Sutherland, and then at the Blue Cross on Saturday afternoon. Bloomfield boys, and you know what? There's the Gananda boys having a pretty good season, and Sodus has just not been able to figure out how to win close games against quality opponents. A Gananda-Sodus second-round game. You could have an all Wayne Finger Lakes quarterfinal at the top there, which would guarantee an all Wayne Finger Lakes semifinal matchup up top. Then you got East Rochester. Letchworth and Oakfield, Alabama won't roll over for them, but they are set up pretty nice to find themselves in the semifinals, and then would likely be against Pembroke. Red Creek isn't bad for an 11 seed. I mean, I could see them maybe pulling an upset, giving us an all Wayne Finger Lakes semis, but probably not. But I do expect Lions, then either Gananda or Sodus. Lions versus either Gananda or Sodus in the semis, and that'll be awesome. And then on the other half, in the second half of that semifinal doubleheader at Pittsford Sutherland, East Rochester.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty stacked one. I mean, it's kind of like what I would say for the maybe be on the girls' side of things here is our C1 for the boys. I'll call my shot. I have a hard time believing anybody kind of gets by Lions, admittedly, here. I don't know. I got a feeling, though, we might see a rematch, at least for them anyway, of the C crossover last year. their final one against Pembroke before heading off to the Far West Regional for the championship game. That would be pretty exciting, the Dragons and the Lions once again. But this is the best shot I'd say of having, in my mind anyway, a true Wayne Finger Lakes coverage area matchup here in the championship that we've seen so far.
The Blue Cross.
Yeah, between Lions and East Rochester, which would be two independent and Wayne County as it was this year anyway. So, but yeah, I mean, these early matchups get you excited because it's one of those things where I look at it anyway, and I definitely like Sosa's chances against Holly. I like Ganada's chances against Campbell-Savona. I don't know much about Geneseo, admittedly, on Bloomfield. So I like our chances of at least having one semifinal matchup for sure locked in on the 27th.
Geneseo has upset Lions before, never that early. It was in the semifinals a few years ago in Bloomfield, where it was a bit of an upset from Geneseo. But Kyle, nobody has more pressure on them year in, year out in sectionals than Lions. They always seem to come in as top seed in the smaller seed classes, is a heavy favorite, and it's not always that simple. You know, these games are 36 minutes, get a couple hot shooters on another team, you're off. I mean, it can happen. But the target's right on the back of Lions again this year is the top seed in C1.
Yeah, if I'm being honest, I think Lions gets to the championship game easily. I do like, the season's gone on and so does Fed. I just think Lions is just too good. As we've seen, they played state-ranked opponents. They beat an undefeated Avon team. They beat York. They're just very good. And so I see them in the championship, but I do think Pembroke will give them a little bit of a fight because I see them in the championship game as well. I think East Rochester's season comes to an end in the semis. So, yeah, that should be a good championship game. But overall, I don't know. I think I've said all along, I think this is the easiest path for a team on the boys' side to win a sectional title. I think Lions is just that good, and it lines up perfectly for them.
And then, just looking a little beyond, if Lions does take the sectional title in the Blue Cross on Saturday afternoon, March 2nd, what are their odds to get to the state tournament, to the Far West Regional, to win the Class C play-in tournament, the little mini play-in tournament?
Yeah, that's tough.
You face York again, maybe?
Yeah.
Iron Bergen, maybe?
Yeah.
Others? Who's the one seed in C3?
Is that Fillmore?
Fillmore?
Yep, 18-2, and HAC, Arkport. So yeah, it's going to be tough. But I do think they'll win a sectional championship again, which would be their 20th or 21st?
More.
22nd or 3rd.
Oh wow, so I'm a little bit behind. Yeah.
Most in Section 5 besides East High.
Yeah.
East High 1, Lions 2, and then you'll find not far behind is Newark, Minders, on the boys' side at least, we're talking boys. Really, and that's one thing that Wayne Finger Lakes teams can take a lot of pride in is how well teams from these leagues have done historically in sectional play against the wider Section 5. Really, some of the class leagues of the entire Section 5 over a period of the last 40 years, since they started really doing sectionals in states, late 70s.
All right. Cross over to B2 now.
Yeah, now things start to get a little interesting. B1 will be the one that will probably have a lot of our attention, but there's Marcus Whitman boys. They make their way all the way up to a 3 seed, which is super impressive to me. Playing in a Finger Lakes East League as the smallest team to gain enough wins and sectional points to be a number 3 seed, and so that's just a bonus because they're going to be prepared for these games. Playing in that tough league, but to also come into it as a 3 seed, get that first round bye. I know that Coach O'Connor and his crew and all the fans of Marcus Whitman have got to be pretty excited about a chance to win another sectional title in B2 here. Avon up top, Kyle, you mentioned it, Lions beat them, so they're beatable. They're one of the better teams in probably, all the Section 5 mid-sized schools and small schools, Avon. So if they get that far, that'll be tough. Got a way to go, though. Rochester Academy in their opening round game, maybe, and then Canisteo Greenwood, Wellsville in the semis, and then most likely it would be Avon, although you can't count out Attica or Leroy either. And then we should mention Williamson and North Rose also involved here. Williamson had a solid season as they try to rebuild their program, but that's a tough road going through Avon if they beat Addison, and then North Rose Wolcott, same thing. I don't see them getting by Wellsville. What do you guys think about Whitman's chance to, number one, get to a championship game in the Blue Cross, and number two, to win a championship game against a team like Avon?
I think they'll beat Rochester Academy, but what worries me is I think they're going to face Canisteo Greenwood, and they're, with Avon, it's the only teams to lose one game in that classification. They finished 18-1. They're very, very good, and it just concerns me. Like, it seems like the past week, Marcus Whitman, like, yeah, they were a hot team. They won like 9 of their 10, but over the last week they kind of cooled down a bit. They were trailing. What was it?
Royce hadn't been healthy.
Yeah, then they're not healthy, and I don't know. Will he be healthy? It's like,
I would like to think so.
So it's tough. I mean, I like Marcus Whitman a lot. I like what they've done. I would love to see them in the championship game, but I think it's just going to be very tough in the semis.
Yeah, I mean, chance to get to the championship game, I like it. It's just, knowing what we know about Avon, though, is the lingering thing, right? You know, if there's a team to do it, why not Whitman, right? I mean, the Wildcats have been punching above their weight all year by having to do it, obviously.
Yeah.
So
it shouldn't be nothing new.
Exactly. So, I mean, I like their chance to get there, but doing it and winning it's another thing, and that's, I think, where I have the biggest questions is because of that lingering thing that we know about Avon. You know, Canisteo Greenwood, can't take them lightly, as Kyle brought up either. So
The other thing I don't love is that if you look at all the teams that would make up the potential semifinal, it looks like Whitman might be traveling out their way. You know, they can't go
I mean,
too far away, but
B2 semis are the only places that didn't have their site locked in yet.
right.
So, and historically, it's been a bit of a toss-up in years past. I think there's been, times it's been at Bloomfield, times it's been, I know, across 390. So you don't know where you're
Whitman
going.
would be thrilled if it was at Bloomfield, I
Right.
think, but they might even make them go a little further west. I
Right.
could see them going out to
Canisteo Greenwood.
Caledonia, Mumford type of place, maybe.
And the only issue is, I was, you know, the main issue here is Avon being in this bracket. I mean, I would say Avon's had a shot at hosting, but I don't think I can't imagine they'd give them home court, right?
No, they definitely
so,
won't. So
yeah.
Tom Walls from the original location will have to wait.
Yes. B1.
Yeah, now this is one that usually is the most interesting and intriguing, but this year a lot of the teams, the Finger Lakes East teams at least, that would have been in B1 are now in A. So that does open things up a little bit for Minders and Waterloo. And, you know, if Mid-Lakes get by Odyssey, not a gimme game for Minders as the 2 seed. Minders played World of Inquiry a couple weeks ago, and it took them overtime, I think, to get by them, but they did beat them in Seneca Falls. This game will be at FLCC in the semis. And then the Waterloo boys, I can't see them, you know, getting that far. I can't see them getting through Hornell. They might be able to beat Haverling, but they haven't had a great season. But, you know, Livonia boys, not what they usually are either. So, you know, there's a good chance it could be Minders and Hornell in the championship game. There's also a chance that Minders loses to World of Inquiry in the semifinals. So
You're bringing up the biggest question mark, right? Is
Yeah.
just we don't know what Minders team will show up on that given day.
yeah, we've seen a lot of them, and there is some inconsistency there. But, you know, overall, a pretty solid year. I mean, they did capture the 2nd seed. And they, like Whitman, they're playing in a tough league
Right.
against bigger schools mostly.
I mean, I like their path better being on the bottom half of the bracket, obviously. I mean, being the 2 seed will obviously do that compared to the top. And I always say that because you have the pack of Livingston, Genesee, whatever county opponents all in there that usually give some fits historically for Minders. So they find themselves, in my mind, on the better end of that bracket there. You know, I do like their path to get to the championship
Get
game.
to the Blue Cross.
I like the path to it. The matter is, again, kind of like what I said with Whitman, is should they come across Hornell, or I guess really either Livonia or Dansville, even for that matter, I don't know what to expect. At that
I think they
time.
could beat Livonia or Danville. I mean, look at I think Whitman beat Livonia twice this year. Livonia has not been the same. I'm surprised that they actually are a 4 seed. Maybe I haven't paid close
It's a weak
attention.
class. Minder's 12 wins, got the second seed. The third seed is 9 and 11.
I was about to say we're
weak.
they're only the 2 teams above 500.
So initially, I thought Minders wasn't going to make it, but now looking at it, I kind of think they're going to make it.
That World of Inquiry game really scares me because they were in Seneca Falls and they needed overtime to beat them.
And a 9 and 11 team, World of Inquiry.
Yeah, but probably play a tough schedule. They're playing probably a lot of city schools, bigger schools. So
To that end, too, then, who knows what you actually get out of World of Inquiry when the pressure's turned up,
yeah. Yeah, well, like I say, Minders historically in the top 10 of all-time sectional titles. They got a shot at get one here, but like the girls in Class B, they got to go through Hornell,
Yeah.
who's the number 1 seed for both the boys and girls in the same classification as Minders and Waterloo. So
Can't say that all that often. All right, last but not least,
definitely not least, this is
boys A.
this is tough.
Yeah.
This is tough. You got East High number 1. Now schools like Wayne, and to a lesser extent Geneva and Newark, they've been here before, and Palmac, where they've been placed with every year it changes, right, by enrollment or by the number of teams that are in each class. But tough to win a sectional title when you got East High, you got Monroe, you got Pittsford Sutherland. But if anybody can do it, it's the Wayne Eagles. And don't forget, the Newark Reds, even as 5 seed, were in the state Final 4 last year. And we've seen how good they can look, and at times how they struggle, especially offensively. Geneva boys, you can't count them out at 7. Palmac, just their body of work over the season leads me to believe that we can't really pin too many of our hopes on Palmac, but good chance to see Geneva and Wayne in a quarterfinal, which will guarantee 1 team in the semifinals, probably Wayne, although you can't count Geneva out, even against Wayne. And then Newark up top, that'll be a really tough second-round matchup against Monroe. And then if they happen to win that game, you're looking at East High, potentially the number 1 seed in the Final 4. So a little unlucky. I'm sure Newark would have preferred to have been on the bottom half of the bracket, even if it meant they might have to play Wayne. But for Wayne, a familiar opponent potentially in Geneva, and then Pittsford Sutherland in the semis. I mean, it's an uphill climb for the Wayne Finger Lakes teams here in Class A, but certainly something that that could be done. I would say Wayne, probably the best chance to get to the Blue Cross and maybe pull an upset against an East High. Newark, I'd love to see him get to the semis and face off against an East High and see how that goes. It'll be at Webster Schroeder High School. But, what are your thoughts, guys?
Well, the interesting thing is that potential Wayne-Geneva quarterfinal matchup, because those have been 2 defensive matchups this season. I think it was, 44-28 game, the first game that they met in Geneva, and then last week it was, 39-34?
Yeah, it was in the
right?
30s.
I mean, just like, the Panthers have done enough to at least keep themselves within shouting distance in those 2 matchups against the Eagles. I do agree, though. I think Wayne is probably the best chance of moving through this bracket to get to championship Saturday in this case out of the Finger Lakes East teams here. Newark does intrigue me. I kind of like where they're at. Obviously, if you're them, if you were to hypothetically flip-flop them at 4 with Monroe and put Monroe at 5, it makes that quarterfinal matchup a lot easier because it's 1 more home game. And that could make all the difference in the world. I do like their path to the semifinal. I think once you get to the semifinal, you go up against East, that's where things probably could get a little bit sideways for them. But you know what? Palmac's a pretty interesting team because they took Newark right down to the wire last week on Tuesday. They're a really good defensive team. Offense, they kind of struggle every now and then, but their defense really keeps them in games. I could see them maybe upsetting Eastridge and getting to a quarterfinal matchup, but that might be about it for them. But yeah, just to circle back, definitely agree on the Wayne side of things.
I think Newark gets to the semis, falls to East High, and I think Wayne gets to the championship game. But man, East High is so good. But Wayne hasn't, like you said, hasn't lost in New York State, so it'll be a great championship game if that's the case. The top two seeds in that class.
Ostrowski is senior or junior?
PJ?
Yeah.
Senior.
Yeah, so I think Cam Blankenberg, sophomore.
Sophomore, yeah.
Yeah, so it's just the Wayne being led by a sophomore into this den of wolves here in Class A. If there's any sophomore that can do it, it's Cam Blankenberg. And so, yeah, this is going to be a tough tough task for Wayne or Newark, but something that they certainly could accomplish. It would be a great story.
I mean, Wayne too, in that sense, they've been in A consistently here more recently than the other teams, so they probably know a little bit more about who they're kind of going against anyway, if that counts for anything. But in this day and age, you can kind of throw that logic a little bit out the window. Just, you can see everybody at any given time anyway with huddle and stuff like that now. So
yeah, and we'll be announcing. You watch the front page of Finger Lakes 1 to see kind of where we're going to be. We're probably roll into it a little slowly, anticipating that we'll be, doing a lot of these semifinals, hopefully some double headers. We'll have two crews out there, do as many games as we can. Of course, there's some added expense. We've got to pay to do the semifinals and final games in Section 5. It can get pretty expensive, but yeah, we'll be there, especially in these semifinals and final games. We'll probably pick up a couple quarterfinals too. That Minders Waterloo game's almost a guarantee, right? We do that if that materializes. So keep an eye on the front page of Finger Lakes 1. And as far as the Upstate Hoops podcast, I think traditionally this is the last episode. We could maybe bring it back at the end and recap stuff, but traditionally things get so busy in the postseason. As far as Upstate Hoops podcast, this sectional preview edition is our last episode. So another good year for the show, another good year for our coverage as we try to kind of remake the way we do things here in this world of huddle cams.
yeah,
Again, from my recap on how the season went so far is that almost like every year these teams roll out and you're like, man, there just really isn't that many good teams this year. And then by New Year's Day you realize, oh, there's like 6 or 7 or 8 sectional contending teams here. So now's where they put the rubber to the road and see if we can bring home some blocks to the trophy cases of the Wayne Finger Lakes. Any final thoughts, guys, on the season?
yeah, I'm right there with you. Thought when hypothetically we'd be doing this episode, really didn't think we'd be weighing too many teams all that heavily, but lo and behold, as usual, we are wrong. And it was just another pretty great season overall. I know some of the games that we were able to get to weren't the best, but those high games were really great, and really appreciate the help along the way from everybody. I know, Kyle, you stepped out of your comfort zone a little bit this year, stepping into that color commentary role really well, I thought. Obviously your help, Jim, along the way as well. A couple games for you and everything and stuff here. And then also just a quick shout out to, some of the schools that we worked with. I know Lions were up on their streams as well throughout the year, so appreciate, the staff up there. And also over at Palmac with working with the kids again. It's always a pleasure to do that and look to continue that kind of going forward.
Yeah, they do. They do a great thing up there in Palmac. And I enjoyed going to the to see Whitman's new gym.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is a pretty nice facility up there. And Kyle, great job on the updates every single night throughout the entire season. We had the results first on Finger Lakes 1, same night, and usually a little more expansive than other folks. A lot of our other media competitors, some of them don't post the results at all. Some of them post it like 2 days later. But we were really the place to go outside direct to the Section 5 website, but sometimes we even beat them out, right?
Yeah, I usually always had it out between 9:30 and 10, and you'd look and still no other media outlets would have it. So, yeah, I try to be quick. A lot of games. This is my first season realizing how many are actually played. 655 games were played in the regular season. And the next
amazing.
2 nights, we're going to have 42 games. So we're going to have some busy 2 weeks ahead? Yeah, in the next 11, 12 days, we're going to have our sectional championships finished up.
And that is one of the fun things, is the amount of basketball that gets played. But now we go into the postseason and even more basketball, and sometimes you don't know where it's going to be played and what time, and it's just quite a operation. And then beyond sectionals into the Far West regionals and the state playing rounds, it's just, you don't know where the games are going to be sometimes until the matchups are set, and it's for all the volunteers or it's school administrators, it's quite a task. It really is kind of a marvel to see how this gets pulled off every year, and we're about to see it again. So here on President's Day Monday, on the eve of really things getting rolling here. So guys, thanks for another great season on the Upstate podcast. It doesn't mean our coverage of Wayne Finger Lakes High School basketball ends. As a matter of fact, we're kicking it into gear for the postseason. Who knows where we'll be? Keep an eye on the front page of Finger Lakes 1 to see where we will be as the sectional rounds roll on. And thanks for joining us again for another season of the Upstate podcast. Connect with us on Facebook, X, and TikTok at FL1 Sports. Subscribe to us on YouTube, and our audio-only podcast is available most everywhere you enjoy your audio content. You can find our show, live stream games, and local news, weather, and sports 24/7 on the free FingerLakes1.com Android or iPhone app. Thanks again for joining us, and keep an eye for us out on the road to the Big House and FLCZ for the girls here on FingerLakes1.com. Have a great one. Good luck, everybody.